Right now, at the exact moment, 5.4 billion people are connected to a single system that has never fully failed. Not once, not for a single hour. The entire modern world, its money, its food supply, its hospitals, its governments, its militaries, runs on infrastructure that is 50 years old, held together by 1.3 million kilometers of undersea, cables thinner than a garden hose. Today, all of it stops. This is not a cyber attack. This is not a war. The internet simply dies. And what happens in the next 30 days will shock you more than any invasion ever could. To understand what happens when the internet dies, you first have to understand what the internet actually is. Most people picture it as something invisible. Signals floating through the air, data living in clouds. The reality is far more physical and far more fragile. The internet is 1.3 million kilometers of fiber optic cables running along the ocean floor connecting every continent on Earth. It is 600,000 miles of land cables. It is approximately 10,000 data centers, consuming 200 terawatt-hours of electricity annually. It is 5,000 satellites in low Earth orbit. Every single piece of this infrastructure was built by humans, is maintained by humans, and can fail. Today, it all fails simultaneously. The first thing that dies is money, not physical cash. Cash still works. But 92% of the world's money exists only as digital entries in computer systems that require internet connectivity to function. The moment the internet goes down, every credit card on Earth stops working simultaneously. Every ATM goes dark. Every digital payment system, Apple Pay, Google Pay, bank transfers, wire payments, stock exchanges, freezes instantly. The New York Stock Exchange, which processes 6 billion transactions per day, goes silent in the middle of a Tuesday morning trading session. $100 trillion in global financial assets becomes temporarily inaccessible. Not destroyed, inaccessible, for now. The first 60 minutes are confusing rather than catastrophic. People try to pay for coffee, and their card declines. They pull out their phone to check their bank balance, and the app won't load. They assume it's their bank having a problem. Gas stations go to cash only. Restaurants stop taking cards. The confusion spreads faster than the understanding of what's actually happening, because the system people use to find out what's happening, the internet, is the system that just failed. Television still works. Radio still works. But the breaking news alerts that would normally notify 5 billion people simultaneously through their phones don't arrive. People find out the way people found out about things in 1985, from whoever is standing next to them. Hour 3. The supply chain begins to fail. Modern supply chains run on a system called just-in-time inventory. Products are ordered, shipped, and delivered based on real-time data moving through internet-connected systems. There is no warehouse somewhere full of backup groceries. The food in your supermarket right now represents approximately 3 days of supply under normal demand. The moment internet-connected ordering systems go offline, the trucks that would have been dispatched tomorrow with fresh inventory don't get dispatched. Not because the trucks don't exist, because the system that tells them where to go and what to carry has no connectivity. The food already on shelves is still there. The food that was supposed to arrive tomorrow is sitting in a distribution center waiting for an order that will never come through. Hour 6. Hospitals are the first institutions to feel existential pressure. Modern hospitals run on internet-connected systems for everything. Patient records, medication dispensing, lab results, imaging systems, communication between departments and between facilities. Every major hospital in the world has backup generators and offline protocols for power outages. Almost none of them have comprehensive offline protocols for total internet failure, because total internet failure has never happened before. Doctors can still treat patients. Surgeons can still operate. But the pharmacist who needs to verify a prescription against a patient's medication history stored in a cloud system can't access that history. The lab that ran a blood test this morning can't send the results to the doctor's terminal. The patient being transferred from one hospital to another arrives with no accessible medical records. Hour 12. Governments activate emergency protocols. In the United States, the president is briefed in the Situation Room. Ironically, one of the few communication systems in America designed to operate without public internet infrastructure, running on its own classified network. The assessment is immediate and stark. This is not a cyber attack because a cyber attack leaves fingerprints and targets specific systems. This is a physical failure of the underlying infrastructure at a scale that has no precedent and no single point of repair. The entire global internet doesn't have an off switch, and it doesn't have an on switch. Fixing it requires coordinating repairs across 1.3 million kilometers of cable infrastructure in 195 countries simultaneously without the communication system those countries normally use to coordinate anything. Day one ends with the world in a state that has no modern historical parallel. The lights are still on. Power grids run on separate infrastructure. Water still flows. Municipal water systems are largely automated and don't require live internet connectivity to operate. Food is still on shelves, for now. But the economic system that connects every human being on Earth to every other human being has gone silent. Farmers in Brazil can't sell their soybeans because the trading platforms are down. Factories in China can't receive component orders because the procurement systems are offline. Shipping companies can't coordinate their vessels because the port management systems have no connectivity. The physical world is intact. The connective tissue holding it together has dissolved overnight. Day 3. The cash economy is the only economy. Every person on Earth who has physical cash is suddenly significantly wealthier in practical terms than every person whose wealth exists only digitally, which is most people in developed nations. The irony is sharp. The wealthiest people on Earth, whose assets exist almost entirely as digital entries in financial systems, are functionally broke at the gas station. The poorest people in developing nations who never had bank accounts and have always operated in cash economies are experiencing the least disruption of anyone on Earth. Nigeria, where mobile money systems were newer and cash still dominant in many areas, is functioning more normally than New York City. Day 3 also brings the first serious food access problems in major cities. Urban populations are the most vulnerable because cities have always depended on continuous supply chain replenishment rather than local food production. A city of 8 million people like New York consumes approximately 40,000 tons of food per day. The 3-day supply on shelves ran out this morning for high-demand items, bread, canned goods, bottled water, as panic buying accelerated from day 1. Fresh produce is already gone. The distribution centers outside the city have food, significant quantities of it. But the internet-dependent logistics systems that coordinate delivery are still offline, and the manual backup systems that theoretically exist haven't been tested at this scale in decades. Day 5. The medical system is in crisis. The hospitals that were struggling on day 1 with missing records and disconnected systems are now dealing with something worse. Medication shortages. Pharmaceutical supply chains are among the most internet-dependent in the world. Insulin, blood pressure medication, chemotherapy drugs, psychiatric medications, all distributed through systems that require connectivity to track inventory, verify orders, and coordinate shipment. Patients who need daily medication and couldn't refill before the outage are now on day 5 without it. The improvised solutions, doctors handwriting prescriptions, pharmacists manually checking paper records where they exist, hospitals rationing critical medications, are managing but barely. The patients who are not managing are the ones nobody is counting yet. Day 7. The psychological dimension of the internet outage is becoming as significant as the logistical one. Human beings have never in recorded history gone 7 days without any form of long-distance communication available to them. Not since the invention of the telegraph in 1837. People don't know if their family members in other cities are safe. They don't know what is happening in other countries. They don't know if this is permanent or temporary. The information vacuum is being filled by rumor, which travels through physical social networks, neighborhood conversations, church gatherings, community meetings, at the speed of human walking. In the absence of verified information, the human brain defaults to worst-case assumptions. The psychological toll of not knowing is compounding every other crisis happening simultaneously. Day 14. 2 weeks in, the world has divided into 3 categories. The first category, approximately 2 billion people in rural and developing world communities, is experiencing significant disruption, but is surviving through traditional economic and social systems that predate the internet. The second category, approximately 2 billion people in mid-income urban settings, is experiencing genuine hardship, food insecurity, medical access problems, and economic disruption, but is managing through community organization, cash economies, and government emergency systems. The third category, approximately 1.4 billion people in highly developed, highly internet-dependent urban economies, is in crisis. These are the people whose entire lives were mediated through digital systems. Their food, their money, their work, their social connections, their medical care, their entertainment. All of it ran through a system that has been offline for 14 days. Day 14 also brings the first partial restoration. Engineers working in coordinated teams across 3 continents managed to restore connectivity between North America and Europe through a single undersea cable route. It carries approximately 3% of the traffic it normally would. It is not enough to restore financial systems or supply chains. It is enough to send emails. The first email sent across the restored connection is from an engineer in London to an engineer in New York. It says, "We're coming back." The second email is from a mother in Dublin to her daughter in Boston. It says, "We're okay." Both emails are more important than anyone can quantify. Day 20. Partial connectivity has been restored across most of the developed world, enough to begin restarting critical systems in sequence. Financial systems come back first, because the economic damage of every additional day offline is being measured in trillions. The stock markets that reopen do so to the most volatile trading sessions in history, as 20 days of frozen transactions attempt to resolve simultaneously. Some assets have gained value. Companies that own physical infrastructure, agricultural land, cash-based businesses. Some assets have collapsed. Companies whose entire value existed in digital services that 5.4 billion people just discovered they could survive without for 20 days. Day 30. Full connectivity is restored globally. The damage assessment takes months to compile. The economic cost is estimated at between $40 and $90 trillion, depending on how you measure disrupted economic activity, making it the most expensive single event in human history by a significant margin. The death toll from medication access failures, delayed emergency responses, and supply chain disruptions in the most vulnerable populations is estimated at between 800,000 and 2 million people globally, comparable to a significant war achieved without a single weapon being fired. The internet comes back exactly as it was. The same cables, the same data centers, the same routing protocols, the same single points of failure that made 30 days of global darkness possible are still there on day 31. Nothing structural has changed, because changing the structure of the internet would cost more than anyone is willing to spend on a problem that, as of day 31, has already been solved. The most important thing the 30-day internet outage revealed is not how dependent we are on the internet. Everyone already knew that. The most important thing it revealed is the hierarchy of what actually matters when the connective tissue of civilization dissolves. Food, water, medicine, physical community, cash, local knowledge, the skills that predate digital mediation. Every civilization that has ever existed knew these things were foundational. The internet didn't replace them. It just buried them under so many layers of convenience that most people in the developed world forgot they still needed them. The outage didn't teach humanity anything new. It reminded it of everything old. The internet is back. Your phone works. Your bank account is accessible. The supply chain is restoring. Everything is returning to normal with remarkable speed, because human beings are extraordinarily good at rebuilding systems they understand. But here is the number that nobody is talking about on day 31. The average person in a developed nation interacted with internet-connected systems 200 times per day before the outage. On day 31, that number is already back to 180 and climbing. The behavioral change that 30 days of darkness might have been expected to produce. A reconsideration of dependency, a rebuilding of analog resilience, a diversification of how civilization stores its critical functions, lasted approximately 24 hours after full restoration. The world came back online and immediately forgot what it felt like to be offline. It always does. Subscribe, because there are more scenarios like this coming.